Welcome to our second video in our series on installing and configuring Snort. In our last video, we went ahead and installed Snorby, which would be our graphical web-based interface for viewing and managing the alerts we get from Snort. But now we're going to dive right into the meat of this topic, and we're going to start installing Snort. As you can see, I have a new SSH session opened up in PuTTY to the machine I'm going to use for Snort. This can be a physical machine or a virtual machine. In this case, I'm using a virtual machine under VMware Workstation. Whatever you choose to use, you're going to want to configure the network interfaces like this. Since we're going to be doing inline rather than a passive Snort installation, my recommendation is that you have at least 3 network interfaces. In this case, I'm going to be using ETH0 as the management interface. So I'll be connecting to this machine over ETH0 to do any management tasks. Then the traffic that we're going to be passing through here and inspecting with Snort, we're going to use ETH1 and ETH2. They're basically going to be our inline set, so traffic might come into ETH1, get inspected, and then go back out ETH2. So these would be connected to different network segments. I've also, just like I did on the Snorby video, I went ahead and downloaded all the files we'll need, and I'll be sure to put links to where you can find these in the description on this video. So please be sure to check that out. And to start off, we're just going to make some directories here. Going to do an mk directory there of etc snort. And I'm going to make a directory for var snort instance-1. And var snort instance-1 /archive. And just one more, we'll do a var snort capture. etc snort is where we're going to store all the files related to our Snort configuration, things like our snort.conf, and also our rules will be under there as well. Var snort instance-1 is, since we're going to have multiple Snort instances or processes, one of them will store and write its data to instance-1. For example, any of the alert files, the unified files, will be stored here for that Snort instance. And we'll create another instance directory for instance 2 as well. The archive directory is going to be for old unified files. Once we've sent them to Snorby and they're not needed anymore, we'll move them to archive. And then what we'll do is we'll create a script later on that will purge the older items from here. We'll set that up as a cron job, so it'll happen, however often we want that to happen. And that's to keep this from filling up and, eventually eating up all disk space. Finally, var snort capture. Snort now has the ability to actually perform file capture. So this is where we're going to store any files that are captured. But again, we'll get to that later. I just want to go ahead and make sure we have all these directories created. In fact, let's go ahead and make an instance2 directory. And an archive directory. Okay, I'm just going to clear my screen, and let's start by installing Lib Pcap. So I'm going to go ahead and extract the tar file. and change into the directory we extracted. And I'm just going to run configure. Installing a Lib Pcap is pretty straightforward. It's just going to be the typical configure followed by make. And then a make install. Okay, done there, so I'm going to go back up a level. And actually, while it's on my mind, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that Snort machine is set for UTC time. If not, you could just do an ln sf user share zone info UTC etc local time, and you would hit enter there, and then when you run the date command, it should show UTC for the time zone. Okay, next up is going to be libdnet. So we'll start off by extracting that and then changing into the directory that we just created when we extracted the file. Okay, this one's a little more complicated than just doing a configure, make, and make install. Let me clear the screen here and we'll start on the top. We want to do a lib toolize -- copy -- force, and then an AC local -I config. Followed by auto header, auto conf, and auto make -- foreign. Then we can do a configure. And I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but just like on the last video where we installed Snorby, I am installing Snort on Slackware Linux version 14.1. It's the 64-bit edition, and I recommend you do the same. And just like on the Snorby video, I'm going to recommend that you do a full installation of Slackware. And that's, again, just to make sure that you are able to follow along with everything I'm doing and you don't end up getting errors because of dependencies that you don't have installed. So just be sure to do a full install of Slackware. And then you shouldn't have any issues following along with these videos. Okay, the configure finished, so let's do a make. And a make install. Next up is going to be the DAC. So we'll extract the DAC, which are the data acquisition modules for Snort. And we'll change into our new DAC directory. And here we just get to run a regular configure, followed by make, and then make install. And by the way, at the end of the configure, it shows you which DAC modules are going to be built for this system. So AFPAC is going to be built, it's yes. The dump DAC module, IPFW. IPQ is not going to be built. We don't actually need it. NFQ is going to be built, which we're actually going to be using in this video. We're going to be using the NFQ DAC module. So we want to make sure that does say yes. That's the only one we really care about. The Pcap DAC module will be built, but the netmap will not. This is actually a fairly new DAC module. I believe it was introduced maybe in the previous version, but I think it first appeared in the DAC 2.0.4. I could be wrong about that. I honestly haven't really looked into the netmap module very much. I think it may be more relevant if you're running Snort on a BSD system. But anyway, again, the only module we're really concerned with at this time is going to be NFQ. And now we're ready to extract the Snort source code. This is Snort version 2.9.7.0, which at the time of my making this video is the latest stable version of Snort. Okay, we're not just going to do a basic configure, we're going to use some options with the configure command. So we'll run configure, and I believe a lot of these options are actually mentioned probably in the Snort manual or with any documentation that's actually included with the source code here. Feel free to poke through it and read and see what each one does. I'm just going to include some basic ones that I like to use on all my deployments. So I've got enable SourceFire. That actually includes a lot of options. I think it enables things like PPM, which is packet performance monitoring. It gives you the ability to use that in your snort.conf. Enable control socket. I know pulled pork, which is a popular tool for downloading and managing your rule set. It can use the control socket. I don't know that I actually am going to use this in this video series, but it doesn't hurt to go ahead and have it compiled in. Enabled shared rep, and finally enable file inspect. So let's go ahead and I think those are all the options that I want to use right now. So let's go ahead and hit enter and let that configure run. And let's do a make. And once the make finishes, we'll do a make install. And from the Snort directory here, I want to do a cd into etc. It's going to be the etc directory that's underneath the Snort directory, so notice there's no slash at the beginning. Cd etc. And I want to copy these files. We'll copy the attribute table, and all of these file types to etc snort. So I do an lsl etc snort, this time with the slash in front of etc. We're going to do the etc directory that's under the root directory. I want to make sure we have all these. We should have all these files there now. That's good. Okay. And also, Just going to change back to my install files directory. Also now, if we do a snort-V, you should get output like this. It tells us that Snort version is 2970 GRE build 149. It also shows us the Lib Pcap version we're using. In this case, it's 1.6.1. The PCRE version, and the zlib version. Okay, I think I'm actually going to cut this video a little short. I don't want to make it too long like the Snorby video. So what we're going to do next is just go ahead and install Barnyard, specifically Barnyard 2. And that's what's actually going to read our Snort alerts from the files that Snort writes to disk. And Barnyard 2 is going to be responsible for writing those alerts to the database that's on our Snorby server. So there's still lots of configuration to go, but just as the last step for this video, let's just go ahead and install Barnyard. Barnyard is actually this master.tar.gz. So I'll extract that, and you'll see it makes a barnyard2-master directory. So I'll change into that, and I'm going to run autogen.sh. Followed by configure. And I actually think we want to do with MySQL. I'm going to rerun that configure. Oh, and it threw an error when we added the with MySQL option. Looking for Lib MySQL client. So I'm just going to update the locate database and run slocate. Okay, it looks like it's all under user lib64. So we'll say configure with MySQL libraries user lib64. And oops. Or I could, do what it told me the first time and do -- help. I'm going to pipe that to less. Just to give you an idea of where I'm getting these options from. I mean, these are all the possible configure options you could run. So if I just search through here. Just in case you were wondering where I pulled that option from. And now we'll do a make. And a make install. We'll also, still plenty to do in the upcoming videos. Looking at install files. So we installed Lib Pcap today, libdnet, DAC modules, Barnyard, and Snort. So we'll also have to configure pulled pork. But before we get as far as actually downloading any rules to be used with Snort, still a lot of configuration to do with Snort. We need to set up the snort.conf. We need to configure Barnyard and get it talking to Snorby. And by the way, since our Snorby instance is on another machine, I don't want my Snort alerts to be written to that database unencrypted. So we're going to actually end up wrapping that MySQL connection from the Snort machine to the Snorby machine in S-tunnel, which will encrypt that communication for us. But as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for our next video. Thanks.